Okay, welcome to episode 3, Trekking in UBX, up your adventure game with climbing mountains. Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Great to be here, mate. Great to be honoured to be the first guest as well, I hear.
You are the first one.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, as you know, we've known each other for quite some time.
Absolutely.
And I'm a strong believer in what UBX produces.
Yeah.
Having been a member for, coming up to 10 years in May.
That's a good innings.
Yeah, and obviously, our corporate partnership and how we've worked together over those periods of time, which we'll get to a bit later.
Yeah, absolutely.
So climbing mountains, I guess, from a podcast perspective, is around sharing our experiences and stories around travelling across the globe, and the good and the bad, the challenges, and especially having you on today to talk about, I suppose, how we've kind of done that together in a lot of ways, and how our trip last year to Everest Base Camp with approximately 12 UBX members and how they kind of enjoyed the experience and their training leading up to that. So before we get onto your side of things, I guess for the audience, trekking in UBX is what the episode is about today. We'll start off with the trekking side. So we've got the endurance side of things, and how that relates to our adventures and how it relates to UBX in general. So as I said, trekking and endurance. So we have the Caminos, and they're Spain and Portugal, which we spoke about in the last episode of detail. But also we have Colombia that's just come on board, which is of hot interest. We have Egypt, which is a combination of trekking, cruising down the River Nile, into the pyramids of Giza, and also a trek climb to Mount Sinai, which, as I mentioned in the previous episode, if you know your, I guess, Bible, that's that's Moses on the hill. We're also talking about Nepal in depth, so Everest Base Camp, Annapurna Base Camp, 3 high passes, which if you do the 3 high passes, it also incorporates Everest Base Camp and Kali Patar. But the 3 high passes is probably considered one of the highest altitude treks in the world, and you go as high as 5.8 kilometres up, where Everest Base Camp's that kind of 5.3. It does shift because of the Kumba Glacier though. And also Scotland, West Highland Way, which we've kind of tweaked that now, where it's a 130 kilometre walk across the Highlands, which is absolutely beautiful. Wow. And then finished off with 3 games of golf. I do love my golf.
So that's for you.
Well, it's funny enough, the feedback we got from a mini survey was that if you go to Scotland, even if you're not an avid golfer, if you have the opportunity to play golf, why wouldn't you? Yeah. So, and that kind of segues into UBX. Yeah. So I guess thanks again for coming on.
No, you're welcome, Chris.
Please tell the audience what UBX is about and our relationship.
Yeah, awesome. So, thanks, Chris. So UBX, we're a boxing and strength gym franchise. So we're now in 8 countries across the globe. And, where we've really captured the interest from local communities is boxing's this really great way to not only get fit, but it's unlike regular training, you're also learning a skill at the same time. And you don't have to come from a athletic background to have your first UBX workout and, have a safe and fun workout. So boxing's one of those very broad, inclusive ways to get fit. You can be young, you can be older, you can have injuries, and you can still get a bloody great workout. Why we're UBX Boxing and Strength is we also really understand the importance of strength training to have a full, complete workout to get the best results. So it's a really fun, dynamic workout, 12 3-minute rounds, all done and dusted over 45 minutes, and a great way to get functionally fit, which links into why linking with the partnership with Climbing Mountains makes so much sense, because a lot of our members, whether they've come in starting UBOX not fit or coming in as elite athletes, and we get a broad mix, if you train regularly at UBOX, you can't help but get incredibly fit. And
true. Very true.
So it's one of those things. And then naturally, when people start to get fit, they tend to want to be more active in their everyday life.
Definitely.
And so, the U-boxers, when they go on their holidays, of course they might relax, but they're also looking for activity and things to do. And, don't mind pushing their comfort zone a bit. So, when we've caught up in the past, I've always looked at Climbing Mountains, and having been a avid traveler, particularly in my 20s, and doing all those adventurous things, I think it's so good to have a company like yours that provides the opportunity for people to do these things, but have it set up for them, because I think it's easier in your 20s when you're backpacking, you don't have commitments, but when you're busy with your obligations with business and family and that sort of stuff, you don't want to lose that sense of adventure, but sometimes it's hard to commit to those things unless it's all set out for you. So, when we got chatting about a partnership, it was really on the basis of knowing we had the type of market that would love to do these types of adventures. And so just making it easy access to take these type of trips by providing a great partner like yourself that provides all these really exciting opportunities and trips. And, I think the great thing is that these sort of trips, whether they're previously been a part of the training camp or the upcoming open week where this prize for new joins and referrals takes place for them.
Yeah, tell us about that, Michael. That's an important one.
Yeah, so, the open week coming up is, which starts 24th to the 29th, is an opportunity for everyone who hasn't tried UBOX come down. And as part of it, we wanted to provide a prize that was inspiring and created, a talking point. And so what I was referring to earlier, the great thing about a Climbing Mountain prize is it's inspirational.
Definitely.
It's something, there's certain things that people talk about, bucket lists, and, a very common, probably top 10 bucket lists if you surveyed people around the globe would be, imagine going to Everest Base Camp. And so, for people referring friends or joining over this week, they get the chance to win that prize. But not only that, we're going to offer a 10% discount to the entire UBOX network, in our 8 countries, US, Japan, Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, UK, Ireland. And the exciting thing about that is, it's inspiring everyone. So no matter where they are, they've got these big posters of Mount Everest, and if they don't win the prize, they've got the opportunity to do something like this. And
they can come along.
Exactly. And perhaps you can share a bit about the success of last one, in the sense of we had 2 winners, but we ended up getting a great group of UBOX members. And that's such a great story for us to see our members putting their training to good use.
Yeah, look, very valid points. There's so much I can talk about with that, but we'll go with the first part. March last year, we went to Everest Base Camp. We had 2 winners, as you've said, a male and a female winner. Both great people.
Yeah.
They, in turn, got some family and friends to come along. So we had a great combination of family, friends, current UBOX members, new UBOX members. So people that had got inspired by their own family to go and try UBOX and then joined and changed their lives. Like, if I talk back to my personal story, because I guess a podcast is not only information, but it's also sharing stories, is that in May 2015, I came across UBOX. I knew the first one in Toowong, being Brizzy Boys, and the second one being Milton. One of the founders and owners of the master franchise, Tim, got me involved. And I changed my life from what once was quite a fit person. I'd got myself in this corporate world. I was working too much and I wasn't devoting any time to my fitness. And what UBX brought for me was this 45-minute workout that we can all do. And, you know, we got 12 3-minute rounds. It's challenging, but you, with the right trainers, which all the gyms have, they ease you into it. They correct your posture. They introduce you to a new skill, as you mentioned. And all of a sudden, I found personally that I had that lust for fitness again. And when I thought about the gym, or even the cycling stuff that I love, that takes a long time. So being an avid cyclist, I need like kind of an hour and a half. I've got to set the bike up, I've got to get dressed, I've got all these kind of things, you know. I'm affected by the weather, the elements, etc. Where UBX, I wasn't. I could rock up there and I get this amazing workout for 45 minutes and then my body was burning the whole day. And I got fitter and fitter, which then got me back into mountaineering, which I'd kind of let go a bit because, again, I was finding a reason not to exercise. I started eating better. You know, I started drinking less and all these things added up to a really positive outcome. And discussing those aspects as we walked across the Himalayas, everyone had a similar story.
That's awesome.
And I've always been a very passionate believer in what you provide. And I'm so glad to see it go global. And the actual prize we've got and or the opportunity, as we've mentioned, that family members can come along. If you're a UBX member, you can bring your family along. You can bring friends along. Not only to the Everest trek itself, but also to the gym. Because, you know, it's so approachable. Like I know there's a lot of gyms throughout my life you go into and you're kind of a little bit, wow, you know, I'm all these fit people and it's quite a bit daunting, you know. I mean, how would you, to our listeners, how would you describe that barrier to entry and how you've overcome it?
I think a lot of people in general, when they're approaching a new gym routine, there's a bit of apprehension or fear about, you know, will I be fit enough? Will I fit in? And the environment we like to try to create is more like a local sports club. So when you go down local sports club, there's banter, there's family, there's social, you know, and there's activity in the background.
You
know,
makes sense.
And so, you know, a lot of us grew up playing those team sports and, you know, as an adult, you sort of miss that environment, right? You don't want to treat exercise like a chore. You know, one of the key things for keeping members is if they feel like it's more like a hobby than a chore. And the only way you can do that is make it fun.
That's true.
So if you create an environment that's too serious and, you know, every time you're like, oh, got to drag myself to the gym, you're fighting a losing battle. Whereas, you know, if the environment is fun, inclusive, there's no judgment on how fit you are or anything like that, then it's sort of, it's far more welcoming. You see mothers and daughters training together, workers, as I said, people of all ages and fitness levels. And you can have two people side by side, one, you know, an athlete that's training in the off season for their professional sport, and, you know, 65-year-old, you know, retiree who's still in incredible shape because the workout's accessible and the environment is welcoming. So, you know, I think it's a big thing to just, you know, for people to take that step just to understand that, you know, this is a type of workout environment that's suitable for everyone. And once you're in that, you know, to your point, you can't help but share and tell your friends and family about it.
Yeah, I think one of the things too is I found interesting, like, you know, my background was, you know, I spent 10 years in the military, so and did certain, you know, types of activities, combat sports. So I guess when I walked into, you know, UBX, boxing to me was familiar, but for a lot of people it's not. How do you overcome that?
Yeah, again, like I said, that boxing out of all the martial arts is the least polarizing and the lowest barrier.
That's true.
Like, it'd be hard to do U-box with jiu-jitsu or something. Yeah,
that's true.
You know, and even sort of kickboxing or karate, you need a certain degree of flexibility, whereas you need very limited athletic ability to do a safe boxing workout.
Yep.
And so just explaining that and just reminding people there's no rush to develop your skills. We'll just start with the basics. Almost everyone can do a jab cross, you know.
Yeah.
And then just learning.
The old 1-2.
Yeah, exactly. And then working on that, working on your stance, working on your guard. And that might be all you take away from the first session. Happy days, you know. And, you know, you do the first speed ball in the first session. You feel a bit uncoordinated and you say that's absolutely
everyone
fine.
does.
Yeah, everyone does, exactly. But what's cool in 6 weeks' time, you know, that mum of three who's never boxed before is next to a 20-year-old teaching him how to, you know, a few tips on the speedball, feeling like Rocky. So everyone can develop that skill. You can do it at your own pace. And that's the beauty of it, you know. It's sort of, and the other thing about boxing, I think particularly in this day and age, it's a great stress relief. You know, it's good to have a physical outlet.
Take it out in the bag.
Exactly. Exactly. So you see, you know, men and particularly women, you know, they put in a big punch and relieve a lot of that pent up stress, and everyone carrying that stress, you see, you know, by the end of the workout, that's all gone.
Well, it's interesting you say it because like when I look at the synergies between climbing mountains and U-box, apart from the fact that we're kind of, you know, around bettering yourself, getting fit, feeling inspired to try these activities, is that what I've seen is that there's a lot of females getting involved.
Yeah.
Like in our business, I would say at the moment for climbing mountains, trekking, cycling, mountaineering, we'd be 65% females.
We're exactly the same.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Like, isn't that interesting? Because I look at my local U-box, which is the one I've been going to for years at Milton, is that I would say I see more women in there than I do men.
Yeah.
And even when I had a workout only the other day, as I was leaving, because I get up really early, there was 3 young ladies coming in, and you could see one was just confidently putting wraps on, and the other 2 ladies, they were kind of like, they were like a little bit timid, but you could see after about 2 rounds the smile on their face because they were doing something that was just that little bit different.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was all based on where the boxing fitness market was prior to U-box. You either had a testosterone-fueled traditional boxing gym, which was dirty, and, you know, as soon as you have a ring in the center of the gym and people sparring, there is a intimidation factor.
100%.
And, you know, even if there's no intention, a lot of the boxing coaches give you the feeling they're working your way to get into the ring. And, you know, let's face it, majority of the population don't want to go to work with a headache after, you know. So and not to say boxing as a sport isn't fantastic. We've got Danny Green, 4-time world champion boxer, as one of the co-founders, and it's a sensational sport. But if you just did the purest boxing, you'd take a big chunk of the market out. And there's so many people that can benefit from boxing if you provide it in an environment that's safe and welcoming. And that's what we've done.
That is so true. And look, I used to go to one of the local, quite well known, I won't mention, boxing gyms, and I really enjoyed it. However, when you walked in there was so many athletes that were so full on about it. I felt like, geez, do I belong here?
Yeah.
And I'd spent 10 years in the military in certain areas that I'm not very timid, and I'm certainly a fairly confident person. And I was like, you know, I can't skip as well as these guys. I can't hit as hard or as technical, and where I found that U-box didn't have that. You know, you were welcomed in with a smiley face.
Yeah.
Like you said, the old 1-2 was all was required, and people built the skills up. I know a couple of ladies that have been going to U-boxes as long as I have. I'm more off and on. They're very regular, but their ability on the speedball,
Yeah.
I just look back and go, wow.
I know.
Like it's just like, because it's easy once you get taught, once you apply yourself, and it becomes fun.
Exactly. And, ultimately it becomes addictive, which is where the sweet spot is. You need to get your session and you need to get that release, and that's great, because the biggest challenge with the fitness industry in general is retaining members. People coming in with a goal and then falling off the wagon because typically they're not enjoying it. And if you put the results to the side and just focus on the process and the enjoyment of the workout, then the results will absolutely come. And as you said earlier, what naturally happens is when you start to feel fitter, have more energy, you want to eat better, you sleep better,
your life changes.
The momentum kicks in, and then
it does.
And then, as you say, and that the cool thing is then that person changes, and
they do.
We'll then look at what I want to do for my holiday. No, I don't want to go to a resort. I want to climb to Mount Everest Base Camp.
Totally.
So it really does change, and you can get that change at any age. You can get that change for a school kid that lacks confidence, walks in with their head down, and 3 months later they walk in with their head up, feeling different too.
And I've seen that.
Yeah, exactly. And then you've got someone, who's recently retired or just at that peak time of their career, and they've let their health and fitness go. And even though they're, potentially successful in their career, they feel really flat. And, just getting into a routine which prioritizes them and gives them something they enjoy in their week, you see the difference in their mental space as well, and that's a big thing.
And that's what you touched on before when you said about the community. Like, I've noticed with my local is that I go down there, and a lot of those members have been on my tours, and you can see their confidence of building, but they also feel that community. That they've joined, a touch footy team, or they've joined that esprit de corps, they'd call it in the military. They feel like they're part of a family.
Of course.
And then they're quite welcoming to other people that come in, and then they come in and say, oh, look, I can do this.
Exactly.
And I think the other thing too that I love about it is that it is 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And because it rotates in a circuit fashion, 3 minutes on, 30 seconds rest, etc., like 12 rounds of boxing, is that that's the time frame, and you can jump in at any stage. So it's no class timetable. You rock up, ding, ding goes the bell, there's a spare station, you jump on that and you're rotating around. The trainers are there to correct your posture, technique, to give you a workout, and to take that tailor-made. But I think the other part too that's really good for our listeners is that you've got extended access now.
Yeah. So outside of the boxing, other unique sort of point of difference from other group training gyms is our flexibility. So, we realize that most people find it far easier to stay motivated in an environment where there's other people training, there's a good coach, guiding the workout, in our case also, teaching you boxing and, adding to the fun factor, right? But committing to a timetable in today's environment can be tricky,
For sure.
Like every week, think this goes this way, that goes that way, and suddenly your schedule's all out of whack. And if you're one of those people, then that would mean you're missing sessions that you really wanted to do. Where in our case, members never miss a workout they want to do because they have flexible start times during the opening hours. So rolling start times every 3 minutes after the 30-second breaks, new round starts. So you can slot in, get caught in traffic, meant to get there at 6 a.m., get there at 10 past 6, no stress.
Yeah, it's okay.
You start. And then when we saw how much members valued that flexibility, we realized we've got the space and we've got the workout and the technology to allow members to access the gym outside of hours. So it's the same awesome workout. The 12 stations are set up, ready to go. But yeah, if you knock off early from work on a Friday or want to get a Sunday session or a Saturday arvo, whatever it is, those times when group training gyms are typically not open, our members can access it. And, what typically you see is members still love the coach-led workouts. So they're coming in 2-3 times a week during the coached hours, but getting that extra session in that they absolutely would want to do, they can now do.
Yeah, and we talked about like both our synergies at 65% female based. Is it safe to do these after hour workouts?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we're not in any way pioneering 24/7 gyms. They're, the majority of gyms, I'd say, 24/7. Where our point of difference with extended access is when you go into a 24/7 gym, it's a DIY job with your program, right?
100%, yeah.
Whereas, we've got a world-class program. It's derived from full-time world champion boxer and athletics team. So you're going to get a quality workout. You don't need to think about it. You rock up and it's already set up for you to go. So there's no fluffing about. There's no time to sit on a bench and look at your phone.
No.
You're in.
Phone goes in the bag.
You're dialed in, and then 45 minutes because you're on the clock. You've got that same urgency and intensity to the workout when a coach is on, compared to when you go to 24/7 gym, and it's all down to your self-motivation and programming. So, that's a really unique point of difference, is that you just rock up and the program's ready to go for you.
So if you want to explain a bit more details for our listeners about the product, because you've got the screens, and how do the screens work? So after hours, how do I guess, work out but get some instruction?
Yeah, so we brought the screens in to, support the coaches, right? So the coaches are the primary driver of the workouts. But, when you've got a packed gym and you've got 2 people per round, even with 2 coaches on, if there's a moment of, what was I doing again for the second exercise? You've got a clear description on screen, how many reps, what, the target for the round, the goal for the round, the tempo, all that sort of thing. It's all there on the screen as a reminder.
And it's an image of someone doing the activity.
Yeah, a video. So, on the boxing rounds, it'll have the combination. With the other exercise on the strength rounds, it'll have the exercise demonstration of that, how many reps, all that sort of thing. So it makes it really easy and seamless experience for members.
It does too, because I remember when I first started, there was a little white A-frame and they'd write the exercise on it, as a lot of circuit stuff is, and you'd be looking at each other and saying, what's that?
What is the dead bug?
Yeah.
And exactly. And so even if it was a few seconds of a member sitting around feeling awkward, that wasn't the best experience we could provide. So the screens really help with that. But then it opened up this opportunity to go, right, well, we've got it now set up so members can follow that same routine and using the screens to get a good workout in. And, there's even scalable options, on the screen. So if you can't do a pull-up, there's a scalable option for you. So you don't need a coach in those out of club hours.
No, you don't. And also, too, I think one of the things that our listeners would probably, because I think we really want them to come down and try. They come down and try during this period. They get a chance to win a trip to Everest Base Camp with a bucket list once in your lifetime to see the beautiful Himalayas. But it's interesting because I know, apart from obviously on the screen, you can see how hard you're working if you've got a monitor, but more importantly is you can work your way up. Like, I think that's important for our listeners to understand how you can come in there and you can work your way up from a low heart rate base, and you can redline if you want. So I guess what I'm trying to say is you've explained to the viewers is how that works out for someone that's getting to a fitness standard or someone that's super fit.
Yeah, so, intensity is based on effort, right? And so, I always use the example of we've got MyZone, which actually captures your heart rate, so you can see how hard you push yourself. But if you're in a spin class with Lance Armstrong and you hadn't cycled in a year, your 90% would look very different to Lance's 90%. Now, the extra supplements he took aside, what the point is it's all about your personal effort and related to where you're at that particular point. So, each station has a guide to what effort you need to put in based on your heart rate zone. So it might be a yellow zone is 80 to 90% of your max effort. You see a red zone, that's 90 to 100. Green zone's 70 to 80% of your max heart rate. And so that's all relative to your effort. Now, what we do is we recommend for members, particularly in their first 28 days, is to not worry too much about intensity. Just focus on the movement, focus on getting through. You might start with 6 rounds for your first couple of sessions.
Good point.
Just to get a feel for it, and then build your way up. And then once you've got that base fitness, then you can start working towards those zones in the workout, because your red zone is just you putting in 90 to 100%. So it doesn't matter if you're super unfit, you can still put in 90 to 100% of your effort. And then an elite athlete, their 90 to 100% might look different, but everyone's getting that same experience of, oh man, I pushed myself hard.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why it's inclusive. Like, just because you're not as fit as someone doesn't mean you can't put in a big effort for a workout, and go, oh, how good was that? And that camaraderie of getting through a tough workout together is also a great way to, build bond with your members, because you're like, whew, that was tough.
I think so. I think also too, like when we talk, and the listeners that'll obviously watch this podcast, and we want them to come and try, a U-box, but we also want them to come in there with it. Don't come in there and see a super fit, maybe amateur boxer in there that's going full bickies and go, oh, I've got to be like that. No, you don't.
No.
In fact, we don't want you to do that. We want you to come in. It's the same on our treks.
Yeah.
We go along at a pace that applies to the group.
Yeah.
So you're always going to have people in our trekking group that are perhaps, I wouldn't say an elite athlete, but maybe they do, long distance running, or they might do long distance riding. So they're quite fit. And then someone else in the group might be someone that is really comfortable walking 10 kilometres, but when they get that 20K mark in one day, it's really going to break them. So we generally tailor it all the way through.
Yeah.
And I think when I first started at UBox, that's what I really loved about it, was that I can jump in there and I can build my fitness up. I don't have to be at that high end, that triathlete kind of end.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important for people coming down during this period of time to try out the U-boxes.
Yeah.
What else would you like to say around that might encourage people to come down and give their local U-box a try?
Yeah, well, as I say, 24th and 29th is open week, so great opportunity.
Of this month?
Yeah, of this month to come down. If you join before April 6th, you go into the opportunity to win the prize to Mount Everest, so just take a note of that. And I guess probably what I'd say is, if you're someone that feels a bit uninspired by your current training regime, or uninspired to start one, then come give us a try, because, the biggest bit of feedback, if you go and look at the reviews across all the gyms, is like, so many members say, I never used to enjoy going to the gym, but I love U-box. And if you're someone that, has that feeling of, going to the gym's a bit of a chore, traditional gym, maybe you played team sports growing up and you enjoyed that, but don't enjoy going to the gym, then, come give us a try, because that's the environment.
So we have a similar problem with the way people think. So if I come to U-box, I don't have any boxing gloves.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, a lot of our packages include boxing gloves. So we've got trial gloves for your first workout.
Yep.
And then if you join there, got great partnership with Adidas. So we've got some really cool Adidas U-box gloves that you get, suitable for everyone. And then
that's awesome.
You got your kit ready to go, and that's all you need. That you can grab a MyZone if you want. And then we say 12 workouts in 28 days is a good target, even if they're 6 rounds or 12 rounds. That will get you in a good routine, and then you're away.
Yeah.
So don't we say don't overcomplicate it.
Yeah.
Don't try to achieve all your goals in 28 days. Just focus on getting in a routine. And then, like we said, once you get addicted, you're away, and we'll check in 6 months later and see a different person.
Yeah, look, that's all really good points, because I know when people think naturally, I'm going to go to a boxing style gym, but I don't have any wraps, any gloves. It's the same with our treks. People go, oh, I have to buy all this gear. Well, actually, no, you don't. I mean, when you join one of our treks, obviously we'll educate, teach, and suggest. But for example, our Everest Base Camp trekking group, so UBX Challenge, is we got to Kathmandu, and I actually prior to I'd told them that you can get it a lot cheaper in Kathmandu.
Yeah.
They bought a lot of equipment for a tenth of the price you'd pay for it in Australia, and that's really important, because a lot of people go, well, I've won this trip, or I want to go on this trip, but it's going to cost me thousands of dollars in equipment. No, just like UBX, you don't have to go and buy wraps and gloves initially. I know some people that go to UBX, they've got 2 or 3 different sets of gloves because they've decided they want their own as they've been there for a lengthy period of time. And that's what I suggest with our trekking groups, is that don't rush out and go buy pro Gore-Tex gear and all this expensive gear. Talk to us first. We'll show you how to save money, what you should buy, and how you should train for it. And when because we're partnershiped and we believe in UBX so much, we always suggest, if you want to do one of our treks, you actually go along to a UBX and you start building your base fitness from there, because it does complement very well. Outside of that, our top tours, the Himalayas we've spoken about a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, that's in Nepal. That's the region we play in. The Caminos, we've had people, U-boxers that have gone and done the Caminos.
Yeah, for sure.
Western Arthur Traverse, our wilderness side of things. That's pretty hardcore. That's probably, you have to be very comfortable with basically carrying your house on your back.
Where's that?
That's in Tasmania, Southwest National Park.
Oh, cool, yeah.
So across the Western Arthurs, the roaring 40s from the Atlantic, or the Antarctic, not the Atlantic, and you can get like snow in that region in December. So it can get pretty full on. Yeah. But if you like, outdoor camping and seeing very remote areas, it's pretty amazing.
And what do you say, particularly for those that maybe haven't done an adventure holiday before? What do you say the biggest takeaway from those people at the end of the trip? How do they feel afterwards? How do they feel going back to life? It's a good question. I guess the biggest thing we usually get back is they're apprehensive about having a guide, but they realise how important having a guide was. Pre, during and post, as they reflect on the fact that little bit of guidance made their trip really enjoyable. Versus a lot of people, they want to go and experience it themselves without having a professional guide. And some people get away with it. And there might be a number of factors to that we can't put our finger on. But a lot don't. And I think when we're time poor these days, 45-minute workout, being time poor, we don't want to have an injury when we go on one of these activities, and we want that kind of peace of mind from a safety perspective. So you can just enjoy the experience.
Exactly. And that's what I think the feedback that we get constantly is really glad we took that guide for all the reasons I just mentioned. We have some amazing deals at the moment. We have a group going to Ecuador, the Andes and the Amazon basin. So we're offering 10% off at the moment, so that anyone can get hold of us through travel@climbingmountains.com.au or on our WhatsApp. +61 410 452 011. Obligation free. Hit us up. We'll explain it all. Beautiful part of the world. We also have a cycling tour going in the 4th of October. There's quite a few people from America that have jumped on that. That's riding across Spain, which is amazing, over 12 to 14 days. Those sales are on tour. Those sales are are live now. We've got some new tours coming up next month. We've got Colombia, Finland.
Cool.
There'll be April and packages in Pakistan doing K2. And we're putting together a women's adventure group, hopefully coming out live in May. One of our guides, Jessica, she takes away a lot of female groups and they're getting a hell of a lot out of it. As we always do, we start to wind up the episode. Anything you'd like to say as last thoughts or feelings, I guess?
Well, given we're talking about this partnership, I'd just say for everyone to, if you're feeling inspired about trying something new this year with your time off, jump on the Climbing Mountains website and, do something different and, do a holiday that will be a life memory and a bucket list, because that's what they are. And you will come back from these trips with a new lease on life. And I think also importantly, it's getting away from the regular day-to-day that you live. And that in this day and age where everyone's so busy, everyone caught up in the digital world, just to step away and see some of these beautiful places around the world and be active I'm a strong believer in a great way to spend your time off.
Look, they're great words and so true. So as we always say, up your adventure game with Climbing Mountains.
Yep.
Subscribe to our podcast, get involved, call us, obligation free. And for the listeners out there, get into your local UBX. You will love it. You won't regret it. Thanks a lot, Michael.
Thanks,
Appreciate your
Chris.
time.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers, buddy.
Thanks, buddy.